Hey guys, hi, welcome back once again. My name is Vaishali, and having learned quite a few things from, through, and from within human interactions, and having pursued and completed my master's in business administration and in clinical psychology, and having had the chance to work as a counselor and as a therapist over the last few years, I today wish to talk about the protest, the defiance, the rebellion showcased at Jantar Mantar, which led to some big changes, which led to changes on the national frontier. So, firstly, the few things that come up to me when we talk about changes or when we witness changes is that change demands a certain cost price, is that change is never easy, is that change needs to have a certain kind of a desire, a certain kind of a motivation, a certain kind of an intention. That change requires a change in thoughts, which invariably changes our beliefs, which dismantles and disrupts our beliefs, and that it needs to be said aloud, to be communicated, and it also needs to be backed by actions. So it requires rewiring of thoughts, of beliefs, backed by words and by actions. Otherwise, it doesn't manifest in the most desired manner possible. So now, if we understand this, it also tells us that change requires us to desire and a willingness to change the existing status quo, to break out of the existing status quo, the existing mold. So then, elaborating on that a little further, it also then tells me that without the desire to change, it could not have been brought about. Which should also help us understand that maybe then desire might not be the root cause of all suffering, which many a times we use as the blanket statement, as the general statement. Desire can also be the root cause to bring about desirable changes, to bring about desirable results. To bring about intentional results, which then also tells us that we should not go into blanket statements or all or no statements, all or none thinking, that it's either desire is the root cause of all evil, of all suffering, and thereby having no desire is actually quite blissful. Well, they are just two extreme ends. But between those two extreme ends is a vast spectrum of choices. And maybe the beauty of the life and maybe the cruelty of life is also getting in touch with those nuances, with those nitty-gritties, with those details. It also told me that change requires active participation to manifest the desirable outcome from the status quo, from the existing structures, which naturally calls in for some kind of a change in thoughts, for some kind of a change in beliefs, which then calls for dismantling those thoughts or maybe rewiring those thoughts, dismantling those beliefs, or maybe rewiring those beliefs, changing the emotions attached to those thoughts, or maybe dismantling those emotions and remantling them again, rebuilding them again in a different way. It also told me that change is brought about by the ones who have the courage to participate. Because any kind of a change in itself is an act of rebellion, in itself is an act of protest, in itself will never feel comfortable. Next, it also told me that there are no free lunches in this universe for a huge cost price needed to be paid by few students who decided to take their lives, by few students who could not bear the pressure from the family and from the system as well, to then Sonam Wangchuk going in with his Bhukh Hartal, hunger strike, till the time the matter is addressed, till the time it's not just addressed but it's also resolved. To then the students protesting, participating in the protest, participating in the rebellion, defying the authorities, to then getting beaten up, to then being on the roads all day, whole day, to then weathering all kinds of circumstances on the roads outside of the comfort of their homes, to then having to face tear gas, and maybe few of them even willing to face quite literally death if it needed to be faced. Quite literally tells us that there are no free lunches in this universe. Which should actually make us think, which should actually make us question what's the cost price that you are willing to pay in your own life to manifest the change, to get the change, to get the result that you actually desire for yourself. It might also prompt us to think what's the courage that you are lacking from your personal life within your homes to outside of your homes that if you had would help you in getting your desired changes in your life. Next, very briefly, it also tells me that change is brought in by those who have the courage to deal with the consequences of desiring that particular change. Next, it also tells me that when I was in class 10th and when I was in class 12th and when I used to appear for examinations at least up till the graduation level, paper leaks still used to happen then. And it's very unfortunate what I'm about to say that we had gotten used to it. Yes, of course, in the beginning, that came as a shock to us. And even we used to feel, or at least some of us used to feel, as to how can final exams or board exam question papers, some of the most important question papers, gets leaked. Which in today in hindsight helps me understand that at times we are so adaptable that we even adapt to things that are quite literally unhealthy, that are quite literally unhelpful. And not just that, after a point, most of us had started to normalize it so much because we had so gotten habituated to it that some of us would even question, were even expecting the question papers to be leaked and to be shared. Now, today, when I think of it, I really feel sad that some of us, including myself, had the expectation that we would get some leaked paper from somewhere. And how sad it is to have that expectation. How sad that we adapted so well to it. How sad that we normalized and promoted corruption and hypocrisy to a large degree, either directly or passively. How sad to even have that expectation in the first place, whether it was met or not met. But to have that expectation that papers would be leaked and maybe we might get it is in itself such a corrupted thought to have, a corrupted expectation to have. And quite naturally, when so many of us are having that expectation, we are quite literally saying that we have normalized corruption, that we've normalized hypocrisy, that we've compromised our own values, that we've compromised on our own principles. And when we've done that ourselves, we naturally carry it forward. We naturally even pass it around and we even expect it to happen. And unfortunately, we create a very compromised, corrupted, and hypocritical system right from the internal level to the outside world, right from within our families, to within our classrooms, to within our schools, to within our organizations, to within the national system as well. And then we expect ourselves to behave in authentic ways. And then we behave in ways wherein we can actually talk about self love when it's internally compromised, corrupted, and hypocritical. In a way, if we actually need to love ourselves, we first need to reflect on those aspects about ourselves as well. For we may realize that it's very easy to love the virtuous parts of us, but it's not so easy to love the parts of us that are corrupted, that are compromised, that are inauthentic, and that are hypocritical. Next, I also realize that our generation and generation prior to us, my parents' generation, who probably are in their late 60s or 70s or some even in their 80s, were taught to become something rather than the logo that this generation uses, which is just be yourself. Because in our generation and the generations before us were unknowingly taught that unless you become something, you're not worthwhile, you're not valuable, you're not lovable, you're not respectable. And so all of our lives was spent on trying to become something which is whatever what the outside world expected us to become in said and in unsaid ways, to then be worthwhile, to then be respectable, to then be valuable, to then be lovable. And this generation works with the motto just be you, the brilliant you, the messy you, the clear you, the confused you, the good you, the horrible you, the kind you, the mean you, the generous you, and the extremely self centered you. And it's talking about embracing all of these aspects about you, which in a way disrupts the belief system. Because for our generation, if we were not wanting to become something that others wanted us to become, we were called or we were labeled as unambitious, as lazy, as irrelevant, as valueless, as worthless, as useless, and just nalayak. While as just being you is also in a way saying, I am becoming whatever I am becoming. I will keep becoming whatever I will keep becoming if I just be me, if I just accept all parts of me. And all parts of me might not always be really pleasing. All parts of me might not always be virtuous in keeping with the virtues that others have given me. It might be raising its voice when others are keeping quiet. So just being you at times can feel like a slap on the face of the belief systems that actually told us that being you is not as important, or in fact is more nalayak, is worthless, till the time you don't become something. For being you also says, I'm enough. And becoming you to some degree, in very underlying ways, also says, I'm not good enough right now till I become something. And in a way, that's quite literally challenging the existing belief system. It's also challenging the loyalty, the underlying loyalty, the unconscious loyalty towards those who had passed down this belief system to us, wherein we needed to become something to be considered worthwhile, to be considered not nalayak. Next, it also tells me that defiance, that opposition, that protest, that rebellion is not always bad. That yes, it might feel unpleasant. To a degree, it might actually be unpleasant. But defiance, protest, rebellion is not always bad if it has a directed purpose and a clear intention. Next, it also told me that change is revolutionary, is an act of opposition, is an act of protest, and that requires courage. That requires determination, and that requires an uncompromising spirit, even at the cost of one's life. And when I'm using the word uncompromise here, it's uncompromise with regards to one's values, one's principles, one's authenticity, one's integrity. This generation has shown that it's not lazy, that it's determined, it is courageous, it knows what it wants and it goes for it. And it is willing to take the steps that are needed to bring the changes, even at the national level, that it seeks, that it desires, that it wants, even at the cost of being beaten up. And more importantly, it's willing to take accountability for its own actions. It is willing to say that I am being hungry, that I am getting beaten up, that I am living on the roads for so many days for a cause that it's important for them on a very personal level and on the societal, on the national level itself. Next, this generation is also asking to establish and discern the difference between being lazy, which it has been called by many, to being hardworking or working in workaholic kind of way, just to prove something. It's asking us to reflect upon mindful working and mindlessly working, unduly working, overtimely working. It's asking us to reflect on purposefully working and purposelessly working. It's asking us to reflect on the difference, on the discernment of being lazy and of having some downtime in order to avoid burnouts. Next, it also told me that the system is so weird and so wired in weird ways that there are so many lakhs of students that appear for any competitive exam, for any examination, and there are just handful of people or just a little more than handful of people, metaphorically speaking, that get selected. It's quite literally saying that this is the size of the pizza or the roti or any bread that we have. That's the system that is providing us. So that's the size of the roti or the pizza or the bread that I have, which probably 2 to 3 people can share very well if they are not excessively hungry. But unfortunately, there are 1,000 people who want to eat this particular size of bread or pizza or roti. Now, how is that going to be fulfilling for anybody? How is that not going to create chaos within the system? How is that not going to be corrupted? If everybody, if 1,000 people are trying to get the maximum, trying to snatch the maximum from this piece of bread, roti, or pizza, how is our system still functioning on rote learning rather than integrating rote and practical learning, theoretical and hands on experience as well, which unfortunately is happening for a very large part of our lives till we are in school, till we are in college. Next, it also revealed that there's a difference between mind and brain. How is it that our minds can work towards a common cause, can protest together, can rebel together when we all have different brains and probably different experiences registered, memorized in that brain? How is it that so many people's minds can fight for a single cause, can share the beatings for a single cause, can take in physical assaults for a single cause, when we all have different brains, individual set of brain? How is it that our minds can come together? Well, quite naturally, then it also tells us that mind is something that works on both personal and interpersonal levels, is something that works on both individual and societal and collective and national levels as well, which is whereby our minds can have a common cause, a common desire, which our brain is getting connected to, which our brain is making a story about, which our brain and our body is then participating in. So, of course, there's a connection between mind and brain. There's an overlap over there. There's a connection over there, but it's not one and the same thing. Next, it also told me that there's a difference between literacy and between education. And unfortunately, most of our system is designed towards literacy, but not towards education. For educating somebody is about enabling them how to think, which essentially is about questioning everything, which essentially is about being curious, to be able to agree, to be able to disagree, to be able to even agree to disagree, and thereby being able to hold multiple truths, multiple perspectives at the same time. And maybe since this generation is questioning a lot, rather questioning almost everything that we and our predecessors had done, they can probably be our gurus, given the occasion of Guru Purnima that we just celebrated, that probably even we need to learn how to think, which begins with questioning everything, which begins with becoming curious, or rather having the courage to become curious about everything. Being literate, metaphorically, is about becoming a parrot, and being educated is actually about becoming a human from that version of parrot. Next, it also revealed to me that it's almost always the youngsters in any generation or in most generations that drive and bring a change. For most grown ups have just gotten habituated to how things have been. They've just gotten used to saying, अरे ऐसा ही होता है, अरे आदत हो गई है, अरे ज्यादा मत पूछो, अरे ज्यादा मत बोलो, अरे ज्यादा मत सोचो, अरे ज्यादा मत करो, अरे चुपचाप बैठ जाओ, अरे कॉम्प्रोमाइज कर लो, हमने भी तो किया, अरे इग्नोर कर दो, हमने भी किया, अरे ऐसा ही चलता है. And it is these youngsters that are actually saying, अरे क्यों चुपचाप बैठ जाऊं, अरे क्यों क्वेश्चन नहीं पूछूं, अरे क्यों आवाज धीरे कर लूं, अरे क्यों ऐसा ही क्यों चलता है, अरे ऐसे ही से क्यों चला लूं, अरे क्यों कॉम्प्रोमाइज कर लूं, अरे क्यों तुमको अपना गुरु मान लूं. And maybe when they challenge us those ways, we get quite unnerved, we get quite perturbed, and we don't like that disturbance inside of us, which we had learned to silence and compromise within ourselves when somebody else had asked us to do the same, when we were doing it at one point in time. And maybe we need to sit with these questions to be able to understand the youngsters and to even understand ourselves to a large degree. Next, it also revealed to me that so many kids that so many youngsters were out on the roads, were out protesting, were out being defiant, were out rebelling, both boys and girls, both men and women, and not one gender felt threatened because of the presence of the other gender or sex. And that too in a country wherein sexual assault happens more often than we care to recognize and acknowledge. And in a way that's telling, at least to some degree, about trust and safety, about belonging, about a cause that is inclusive of oneself and even bigger than oneself as well. I even saw a reel of some doctors, engineers, and managers who had appeared for some entrance examinations in 2016, 10 years back. And even then, some question papers were leaked. And they did protest a bit, but it died without much of a rumbling, without much of a shaking. And maybe it was the first wave, a small one, of some kind of a rebellion, of some kind of an action, which had taken up at that point in time. But even they went on to say that even the protest that we had did not have that magnitude, did not have that momentum, did not have that kind of a scale, because we probably did not have the kind of courage, that we probably were not willing to back our thoughts and our cause with our actions, that we probably succumbed into pressures a little too easily, that we did not set up our bars a little higher, that we could not establish our boundaries, our negotiables and our non negotiables with as much sincerity and as much dedication as this generation has shown. So maybe on this occasion of Guru Purnima, which we just celebrated a few days back, we can also learn something from our youngsters. That change requires participation. That change requires determination. That change requires courage. The courage to step out of our comfort zones. The courage to disrupt the existing beliefs. The courage to question everything. The courage to not accept the status quo when it's unhealthy, when it's unhelpful. The courage to back our thoughts, to back our emotions, to back our cause by our actions. The courage to show up and to participate, even at the cost of being beaten up, which is very unfortunate. But if that's the cost price that our youngsters have shown the willingness to pay, and very knowingly done that, even we as elders need to question, need to think. What is the cost price knowingly that we are willing to pay for the changes that we wish to make in our lives? We also need to learn from them to be able to walk our talk and not just talk our talk. We also need to learn to set our standards a little higher and not compromise on those. We need to learn from them to be willing to participate in the causes that matter most to us, to show up for the causes within our personal lives and outside of our personal lives. We might also need to learn from these youngsters to be able to stand alone if need be, and to be able to stand with each other, and even for a cause that is important, that are important on very personal, on very individual, and on collective, on societal level as well, on very interpersonal levels as well. We might also need to learn from these youngsters the art to care for each other and become sensitive within ourselves and develop that sensitivity towards others and towards our environment as well. And that includes our physical environment, our psychological environment, our family's environment, our social environment, and our relational environment. Maybe we need to learn from these people, from these youngsters, to be unapologetically demanding, rightfully demanding, of the basic requirements to be met in an uncompromised way. For that will gradually entail the becoming of the uncompromised family system, social system, national system, judicial system, educational system, defense systems, physical health systems, mental health systems, and relational systems as well. Once again, repeating, especially with regards to principles and values feels more meaningful, feels more purposeful, and feels more fulfilling, for it is done more mindfully. And we probably need to somewhat, if not altogether, dismantle the belief of wanting to become somebody and rather even embrace the art of just being you. With all of its flaws and with all of its brilliance, we might also learn from these people to be a little less hypocritical and keep making progress with being less hypocritical every single year, which can be our birthday resolution every single year, helping us be a little more real, a little more authentic, a little more genuine. We can also learn from this younger generation to be unafraid and to be unpretentious, to be integrated with regards to our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, our words, and our actions. And maybe for once we can flip the coin, we can turn over the coin, wherein we actually become the grown ups, where our youngsters feel proud of us, where our youngsters can hold their head high and let their chest swell with pride, not arrogance, but pride, to be able to say, my grown up is somebody, my mother is somebody, my father is somebody, my grandfather is somebody I'm really proud of. Let's just for once say कि कुछ अलग करते हैं. For most of the times, it is the youngsters, it is the younger generation who's been trying to make their previous generations feel proud of them by trying to become something. Let's just for once flip the coin and take the onus on ourselves, wherein our youngsters can say, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you being the person who walks their talk. Let's try and do that for ourselves. Let's think about all of these aspects, and I will see you once again the next week. Till then, stay tuned in. And guys, if you do like the contextual content of these videos, please do like, share, and subscribe.